Princess Catherine, they reportedly have a deliberate plan for Prince George, and they're determined to raise George to be a strong future king, according to royal author Robert Jobson, and according to his new book, The Windsor Legacy.
Royal composure seldom falters, but this one did. While Catherine observed, when young George spoke, feelings soared. To a youngster who had stumbled close by. His words, soft but surprisingly wise, cut through the cacophony, generating astonishments, then quiet. Catherine's eyes were drawn to cameras, shimmering, her hand momentarily lifting, as if to maintain her balance. Throughout the throng, the story changed, the heart softened, and the future monarch felt incredibly present all of a sudden. What precisely did George say then? Moved his mother, and why did it depart? Was everyone in disbelief? The breathtaking fall. In the midst of the celebrations, the quiet mood that had just permeated the place abruptly broke just moments before, as if an unseen thread had broken. Up until afterward, everything had shifted in a soft, steady cadence. Quiet and kind conversations, the subtle buzz of anticipation, and laughter prior to the start of the service. Individuals were as they take their places, hearts calm, thoughts wandering. Next, without the peace gave way to a moment of warning. Nobody anticipated it. A young youngster emerged, close to the aisle. He was not able to older than 4 or 5 years. The steps were uncertain and brief. The manner when the world is calm, young children walk, feels too large for their legs. His gaze were broad, glowing with interest and wonder, absorbing it all at once. The overhead blazing lights fluttered. To him, they were like small stars. The tunes reverberated throughout the hall with a mystical sound. It seemed as though it was beckoning him in. It must have felt that way for a little child, like entering a different reality. Drawn instead of being cautious, he was excited. Strayed a bit too far from his ought should have been. Nobody observed at first. Adults were occupied with welcoming one another, making clothing adjustments, and checking phones, or just taking in the peace prior to the official start of the meeting. The youngster wandered easily, oblivious to the risks that encircled him, edges, steps, as well as the rough surface under his feet. Then it took place. In a moment secondly, his tiny foot got stuck on the aisle's edge. It was an easy error, the good deeds kids do every day while discovering how to maintain their expanding bodies. However, the outcome was unexpected and terrifying. His body tipped forward, arms extending too late, and he went down. Although it wasn't a loud boom, it felt abrasive. A gentle yet startling thud as his small frame struck the chilly stone floor. Suddenly, the room seemed to breathe. Throughout the crowd, gasps were heard like rippling sound in motionless water. People's heads turned swiftly. Talk ceased. Mid-sentence. A surge of anxiety moved from one individual to another, moving quietly but forcefully through the space. Concerned faces, eyes expanded. At that moment, everyone observed the same thing. A little, defenseless youngster stunned and vulnerable. He lay on the ground. A few grown-ups moved about in their chairs. Some were in the middle, prepared to dash forward. Others leaned in naturally. Hearts and hands are already reaching out, hammering with the same pressing idea. Is he hurt? The instinctive desire to shield a child from the air, which was heavy and indisputable. It was the type of moment that serves as a reminder of how fleeting life may be, and how easily happiness can transform into terror. Time appeared to be slowing down. Down. That little moment seemed to drag on forever, more than it ought to have, as if the world it had stopped to observe. The youngster laid there, torn between crying and bewilderment, unable to comprehend what had simply occurred. The grown-ups surrounding him lingered in suspense. Nobody said anything. No, one hasn't moved yet. It was nearly as if a movie scene in which everything vanishes aside from the crucial moment. Most questions lingered in the quiet, silently in the atmosphere. Who could get to him? First, would it be a stranger, a parent, a young person, or an elderly person? Would everyone's response anticipated, or from a person nobody saw previously? There are instances such as these in life, uncommon but potent when concealed bravery comes to the fore. Moments when natural instincts take over, and people have the opportunity to behave with compassion, courage, and kindness. As the space, one fact emerged as it held its breath. Even the smallest fall can occasionally show the largest hearts, and the most unanticipated hero can appear when it's most important. What precisely did Prince George's actions brought Catherine to weeping? Was it an unanticipated act of maturity? Let's investigate. Prince George's unplanned display of pure generosity. Prior to any adult having the opportunity to move forward or even comprehend completely young Prince George. What had happened? Was emotion already? Just 12 years old aged, he responded calmly, without noise, and without having to wait for directions. Suddenly, things changed. On his face, an expression of genuine worry that pierced through the surrounding formality. In titles, customs, that fleeting instant, and training become insignificant. Instead, what emerged was something much more human. A child's natural tendency to assist a different child. He arrived at the fallen child swiftly, falling to his knees next to them, as though it were the world's most natural thing. There was no rigidity in his movements, no indication that he was considering how he ought to act. His serenity seemed steady and comforting, like a gentle touch on a shoulder trembling. He leaned in closer, whispered softly in a gentle, quiet voice. "Are you okay?" he said, not in a prince, but as a young man who genuinely desired to understand. He waited while holding out his hand, until the youngster was secure, with patience sufficient to accept it. When they were upright, George gently cleared the dust from a gentle swipe at the child's coat time, as if every action carried a pledge. "Now that you're safe, you're not," he grinned, but it wasn't a forced grin. For the general population, but a genuine one, cozy and inspiring. He remained there, close and focused, right up until the tears slowed. The child's anxiety subsided, and face gradually returned to a timid smile of relief. Those in the vicinity who were observing felt at a way that this was distinct. It wasn't staged. It wasn't directed. There were no murmurs, directions, or cues from adults. Later on, many claimed that George never once searched for approval. He didn't look at the cameras or look through the throng for people, His gaze was concentrated solely on the young person in front of him, with genuine concern. He didn't think of protocol, neither made appearances. During those brief moments, he lost sight of the burden of being observed, and what lay ahead for him in the future. Rather, he was just being himself. It felt powerful to perform that modest act of compassion, because it was so instinctive. Such compassion cannot be taught through lectures or regulations. It expands subtly, influenced by love, example, and gradual, careful guiding. Maybe in that instant, recollections of his own a flashback to his early years. Knee scrapes, unexpected falls, and the comfort of having someone kneel next to him, posing the same straightforward query. "Are you alright?" Perhaps he recalled the lessons learned at home, where being kind was important, more than rank, and where taking care of others was a means, not a must, of existence. What further enhanced the moment, its simplicity, was stunning. Not very grand, no big gesture, simply a boy's speech observing a distressed child and deciding to assist. However, that decision showed something profound and enduring. It's demonstrated empathy, emotional fortitude, and bravery. The non-shouting kind, but stealthily advances when it's most needed. For those who saw it, the scene persisted long after the dust had settled. Agreed upon, a routine slip turned into something remarkable, changed by a single intelligent answer. It's warned everyone in attendance that the character frequently shows up in the tiniest times when nobody is requesting it, and there is no expectation of reciprocation. In that, with a quick pulse, the world saw a sight of something uncommon. Not in the future training king, but a small lad led through generosity. And in that straightforward deed, one hand outstretched, one polite query asked, he demonstrated true leadership. Starts not with authority or status, but with empathy. How, where, and when did the situation come to pass? What event was commemorated? Now let's explore the information about the service, where Prince George showed maturity and kindness. The magical light of Sandringham's Christmas service. On the morning of Christmas, St. Mary's old stone walls, Sandringham's Magdalene Church, was radiant. Gently, as though they were living. Hundreds of candles adorned the windows and aisles. Their tiny flames were flashing and trembling, in contrast to the grey stones. The illumination shifted softly, creating lengthy shadows that appeared to narrate tales from long past. Legends about monarchs, queens, prayers, and silent aspirations that persisted over time. Inside those walls, time seemed to slow down, as despite the fact that the past and present have agreed to get together and have a while. The royal family of Britain sat in their well-known locations, just as they had done so for centuries before them. They donned warm gloves, well-cut coats, and vibrant scarves that suggested the happiness the time of year. Even so, their attire was okay, so there was also something they have a human and consoling quality. Similar to any family getting ready for a special occasion day, The scent of fresh pine ornaments, combined with the fresh aroma, the church was packed with polished wood. A serene, joyous warmth. It was wrapped around everyone in attendance, extending an invitation to should stop, take a deep breath, and express gratitude. Since Christmas carols continued the service, ascended into the sky. The voices mingled, gradual and sluggish, then bright and powerful, moving like a soft stream through the chapel tide. Every note appeared to nestle into the stone walls, as though the structure itself was paying attention. The melody conveyed sentiments of tranquility, faith, and community, reminding everyone of their purpose for coming. This was more than a yearly custom. It was similar to entering a painting that was being made, where history was being made, family life and belief merged into one another effortlessly. From the outside, everything seemed ideal and meticulously prepared. Each motion was elegant, with each moment being measured. However, beneath this glossy exterior, something more life sparked. A calm thrill moved through the pews, resembling a common secret. Kids were restless and softly whispering while swaying their feet and casting inquisitive glances around. Adults looked at each other and smiled gently. That implied shared recollections and unwritten comprehension. It was evident that everyone experienced a unique feeling suspended in midair. This emotion it was strong, whether it was audible or not. It's prompted an unspoken query in everyone's heart. What if an unforeseen event occurred? What if, amid all of this order and custom, a brief, sincere moment made a breakthrough? It's not a big show, but something authentic and human. A chuckle that arrived too soon. A tear that would not be concealed. A hand gesture that spoke louder than words could. The church had appeared to sense this possibility. The candle's flames wavered slightly, brighter, and the shadows changed once again, as if bending over to observe the elderly walls, which have experienced happiness and sadness. Loss and celebration stood patiently, prepared to embrace one more genuine moment into their lengthy recollection. They'd held several prayers in the past, and they could hold one more tale, for sure. In that holy area, the distinction between royalty and an everyday existence seemed thinner. Titles, our shared heritage, was more important. Breath and mutual quiet. Everybody, whether crowned or not, there was for a little moment, just human, gathered on a winter morning together. That there was a slight but genuine tension in the air, similar to the silence that precedes a heartbeat. Something might occur or nothing at all. Everything. However, the act of waiting felt significant. The church waited as a result. Wrapped in candles, the group waited. Memory, music, and light. They were standing on the brink of custom and reality, prepared to enable life to advance in its most basic form and most exquisite shape. In that stillness that subtly developed significance. No longer was Christmas merely a day or a ceremony, but a reminder that coziness may endure even throughout the winter. Faith did not yell. It lay softly in hearts. No one was ensnared by tradition. It provided direction. Them, and family, in all its manifestations, became everyone's shared simple miracle. Constant, glowing gently like candles sufficient to endure. Hope was felt in that radiance. Near, typical, powerful, and encouraging fresh tales outside the ancient walls of time and history. How did Princess Catherine's response to the action of Prince George of maturity and kindness? Was she counting on it from him? Now let's explore specifics of Princess Catherine's emotional reaction. Pride at its peak. Princess, from a little distance, Catherine stood silently, observing each second of what was taking place in front of her. She remained still. However, anything regarding she responded. Her face was captured on camera, at the ideal time, and what they captured felt open and vulnerable. Her first, the eyes softened, as if something she had been gently stirred deep inside. Then the gradual, organic smile appeared, and warm and inviting. There was a slight gleam, the type that appears in her eyes when strong emotions suddenly surface. It was not a royal observer's appearance, observing a public obligation in progress. It was a mother's expression when she sees her child. Her heart was agape. She wasn't observing a future monarch fulfilling his role for the entire world. She was with her son. She noticed the young child who had once required assist in tying his shoes, who paid attention to bedtime tales, who acquired knowledge, early teachings on kindness, justice, and thoughtful. Titles vanished in that instant. Into the backdrop. What was in front of her was not a successor molded by custom, but a child molded by affection, compassion, and solid direction. The expression says it all. This was private. Pride grew as she observed. Softly and settled over her face, combining with a softer and greater, unadulterated mother happiness. It was the silent pride that doesn't brag, the type that warms the heart and fills the spirit. The years were almost palpable. Behind that expression, the serene conversation follows challenging days, the prompts to reflect of others, the patient's adjustments with caution as opposed to force. Every little the lesson appeared to come back in that one instantaneously, lively and tall. There was something incredibly poignant about how her response seemed natural. She didn't seem practiced or cautious. She examined just like any parent who unexpectedly finds evidence that their efforts were worthwhile. It seemed as though every typical moments, school runs, lunches together, gentle counsel had combined to form something lovely. Observing her was like seeing the parenting narrative quietly, but forcefully as it unfolds. Her presence gave the situation a new dimension. Scenario, transforming it from a public gathering, becomes something far more personal. Without saying anything, she reminded everyone behind the opulent settings and lengthy customs is merely a family similar to any other. A worried family loves, teaches, and hopes. Her eyes reduced the gap between royalty and with the general populace, making the occasion feel genuine, warmer, and closer. There was implied by the manner she observed him, not with faith, yet with authority. She was not directing or correcting him. She was just observing who he was, evolving. That by itself carried a lot of weight. It implied that her function was complete, at least at the time. The values had been provided. The illustration has been established. He was now making his own behaviors, and those decisions were reflected based on what he had been taught. Within her eyes, silent thoughts could be imagined, developing. Maybe there was a quiet grin in her head, a soft feeling of relief and appreciation. Perhaps she believed of his progress, or of the guy he perhaps it will be. It was simple to envision an innocent, affectionate idea drifting through her heart. This is my kid. This is what I desired. That look accomplished more rather than display feelings. It had a narrative. It's demonstrated the benefits of patient parenting, of repeatedly choosing compassion, even if it is not visible. It displayed the profound happiness that results from a child acting with kindness, not as a result of being told to, but because it seems appropriate to them. With just that one look, Princess Catherine reminded everyone that real legacy is more than just duties and crowns, but about quiet, love, and character. The ability to properly raise a child. Was the only person who was excited was Princess Catherine. By the nice remarks of Prince George? How quickly has the news spread? Let's examine the specifics of the one tiny gesture that motivated millions. The ripple was strong. What started out as a silent, hardly perceptible moment in a church with soft lighting swiftly expanded into a much greater, more than anyone in attendance could have predicted. In a few of hours, brief videos and basic pictures of the encounter that were shared quickly on the internet. They traveled across borders, timelines and cultures, arriving at millions of screens worldwide. Comment sections were brimming with passion, individuals telling their own stories, expressing optimism, crying, and posing intelligent queries. In a digital space is frequently congested with anger, irony, and unfortunate news. This a brief moment was like a warm light. In the shadows. Therefore, why did such a basic act that touched so many people's hearts? Why did it go so far so quickly? The solution is in the sense of realism. There wasn't script, no acting, and no feeling of preparing. For cameras, it wasn't polished, or intended to make an impression. It was only a toddler reacting organically to another a person in need. In a world where many public moments feel cautious, this one seemed honest and well managed. That honesty broke through the clutter. It's reminded people of a profound fading is the human that many fear. All natural simple compassion. Psychologists illustrate that when we witness authentic compassion, a significant event occurs within us. We are programmed in our brains to react to it. Observing someone assist another individual activates regions connected to connection and empathy, frequently forcing us to wish to follow suit. It resembles a sparks flying from one individual to one more. One act of kindness doesn't end with the recipient and the provider. It spreads. In a church, a small gesture can result in a stranger being offered assistance on the road. It might lead a neighbor to look after an old woman who lives next door, or urge a parent to stop, take a breath, and be patient with a child who is exhausted. This is how compassion develops. Silently, steadily, and frequently without praise. Why this moment was even more potent was the scene and the participants. The royal family is adorned with a weight that not many people possess. What they did are observed, talked about, and recalled. When generosity originates from such an obvious location, it conveys a powerful message. Being compassionate does not imply weakness. It is not something that should be kept confidential. Times or obscure areas of existence. It is a strength, possibly a subtle one, but powerful enough to transcend social boundaries, soften firmly held beliefs, and remind individuals with similar values. George the Prince's The gesture was particularly remarkable because of his age. During a period when kids are frequently undervalued or perceived as too young to comprehend the suffering of the world, his answer refuted such notion. It's demonstrated that empathy is independent of status, age, or level of education. It starts with consciousness, just observing when someone else is having difficulty, and with the bravery to reply. There was no grand address required. There was no need for a spotlight. The simplicity was the power. In the current fragmented and fast-paced society, many people don't feel linked to one more. We hurry past one another, engrossed in our phones, our anxieties, and our objectives. This kind of interruption, that pattern, they cause us to move more slowly. They encourage us to consider more than just the act, on our own lives, but also on itself. They tenderly request that we survey the area to determine who could require support, consolation, or comprehension. Long after the candles for Christmas, where the decorations were packed and blew out. Away, the sensation of that particular moment lingered. People continued to use it because it was more than just one boy or one occasion. It has to do with the potential. It's posed a silent but impactful query. Should such a modest deed can have a big impact and impact so many people's hearts, what could our own little deeds do? Maybe that's the real this moment's legacy. Not the news reports or the viral videos, but the difficulty it departs from. A difficult decision, kindness, when turning a blind eye is easier. To think that even the tiniest gesture can have an impact. And I wonder if one small deed of kindness carried out today impact the world in ways we might never completely see. Subtly changing the way we long after the season is over, treat each other well, has gone by. Was Princess Catherine ever questioned Prince George's social intelligence? What worries has she had recently regarding Prince George's capacity to get along well outside of the palace? Now let's discuss Princess Catherine's reserved be concerned. Prince George's life preparation outside the palace. William the Prince and the Princess of Wales, Catherine, now finds themselves at one of the most any parent may experience pivotal moments. Selecting the appropriate secondary school for their offspring. For the majority of households, this making a decision is stressful, emotional, and intensely private. For a household, bringing up the pressure is increased for the next king, numerous times over. However, behind the royal titles and international recognition, this is still weighing one each, a mother and father crucial query. Where is their son going to go? Genuinely develop into the person he was intended to be? George Prince, the pair's the oldest child, and the second in line the British throne is becoming older. Where his next educational institution will not just his schooling, but also his personality, perspective, and self-concept. While according to reports, Prince William is leaning toward the esteemed Eton College, he and Prince attended a boarding school for all boys. Catherine claims that Harry once went. To have much less faith in tradition alone ought to direct such an important option. Eton has a long history of royal the past. For many generations, it has generated leaders, prime ministers, and royal family members. For many, it appears to be the clear route, nearly in anticipation. However, Catherine's worries go beyond legacy or reputation. She is considering more than just the crown George will eventually wear, but about that he must have lived his life long before that day comes. Catherine's own academic years have a significant impact on how she perceives this choice. She went to Marlborough College, a co-educational educational institution where together, boys and girls learn, creating friendships organically, and encountered a greater variety of social encounters. She spent those years with her sister Pippa, and James, her brother, influenced her self-assurance, autonomy, and emotional power. For Catherine, going to school wasn't only about classes and tests. It was about developing interpersonal skills, how to adjust and maintain one's own feet. Family-friendly sources imply that Catherine is concerned about Eton's quite conventional, and contain the setting could seem too limited for George. She allegedly worries that it might restrict his exposure to the outside world, a universe away from the routines of the palace and regal rituals. Her worry isn't because Eton's academic performance is lacking, but that it might not provide enough room. for social development, emotional adaptability, and practical life skills. According to reports, Catherine is particularly keeping George's characteristics in mind. She wishes for him to develop an understanding individuals from diverse backgrounds, speaking with compassion, and enhancing one's emotional intelligence have to be a kind leader. Within her eyes, a school ought to teach him how to pay attention, work together, and adjust, not just get him ready for power. One more family connectedness is a crucial component. Catherine cherishes the feeling of security that results from growing up with siblings. A school with mixed genders would permit George to stay near Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte, maintaining the close relationship they share at the moment. She thinks this a family relationship offers emotional the grounding, which will be crucial as George's public as people mature, their obligations grow. When George currently attends Lamook School, beside his younger siblings, taking pleasure in a degree of typical childhood that is uncommon for a person who was born into a royal family. There, he laughs with pals, plays football, and feels about school life in a manner that feels commonplace and secure. Catherine is advised to cherish this sense of equilibrium, particularly in light of recent health difficulties in the family that have reaffirmed the significance of emotional stability and well-being. Regarding Catherine, the core of the issue is straightforward, yet deep. She desires for her son to be not only ready for the throne, but for eternity. She wants him to comprehend the world outside the castle gates, to travel through it with modesty, discernment, and generosity. Her silent concern is that without the proper setting, George may be protected from the very realities that he will eventually be asked to serve. This choice, which is still being made, displays a more profound aspect of Catherine as a mother. She's not just bringing up a future ruler. She is bringing up a human being, someone who needs to acquire life skills, connect, and take the lead in a world that requires a lot more than can be learned from tradition alone. What are your thoughts about George's action? Do you believe that his mother ought to have faith in his skills? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the remarks below.